Episode 600. Yes, 600. Did I say 600? Welcome to the Unlimited Supply Podcast, your daily music business TLDR in your ear 600 times. Powered by a shower of queeners and rods and brought to you by No Disc, helping music technology and finance companies navigate the music industry in partnership with Digital Music News. It's August 21st, 2026. I'm Lars Murray. It's our 600th episode. Yes, thanks to everybody who's stuck it out with me, everybody who has joined recently, thanks to everybody who has challenged me on my dubious assertions, thanks to everybody who's ground an axe or written a review or subscribed on Substack. I really do live for your praise and encouragement. Honestly, there's never enough and never too much of that. It's been a long, strange trip indeed, and the road goes on. And I can't believe I just quoted the Dead and the Almonds in one sentence. When I tell people what I do, that I have a daily podcast, it's shocking how many people go on to ask me in the next sentence what I'm talking about on this week's episode. Yes, people can't really wrap their heads around the fact that I get up every morning and do this every freaking weekday. Actually, it's easier to make than it is to market. So, on this episode 600 show, I'm going to ask you, if you enjoy this show, please give me a social post. Take a little extra time this weekend. It would be great if you could congratulate me on my 600th episode or something like that. It doesn't matter where, Instagram, Facebook, Substack, it's all good to me. Or even just share Unlimited Supply with one person you think might like it today. Thank you in advance. All right, it's Finance Friday, but before we dive into the shallow money trench, the MTV VMAs have a long and rich history, and that long and rich history includes doing what middle-aged people do, moving out to the suburbs. We've clowned on the VMAs for the last couple of years for putting on their show out in the suburbs of Long Island, far from the cultural epicenter of Manhattan. Somebody at Paramount clearly, though, got the memo that maybe Long Island is not the place for the VMAs, so they're moving to LA. Kind of makes sense. It is sort of the center of the industry these days. The other big change in the VMAs is that they're later than usual this year, knocked back till late September. Does anybody still care about them? I'm not particularly sure about that. I'm not particularly sure that MTV's purported target demo connects music and MTV at all, or even has cable connectivity, or whether MTV has any future in the Paramount-Warner Brothers post-merger desolation. Will all of these changes help? Well, we'll see, even if we aren't necessarily gonna watch. Over at Billboard, as usual, another week, another Power Players list. This time, it's HipHop. Too many friends and former colleagues to list here as usual, and as with most of these lists, the bar for Power Players is lower than it's ever been. Which is not to say this does not serve a purpose. It is a handy update. Who does what, where, and who to reach out to if you want to get something done pretty much anywhere in hip-hop. Everybody needs a little praise and encouragement sometime, so congratulations to all of you hip-hop Power Players over at Billboard. Thom Duffy had the lead story. And in a quick AI story before we get to the finance stuff, now, following on the heels of Spotify, Apple is going to do the right thing regarding AI music labeling. Apple is never first, but it's usually the best, and they announced this week that they're going to start labeling AI music on the platform. Over at Billboard, Kristin Robinson had the report that Apple had sent a letter to the labels yesterday. No timetable on the effort, but at least Apple is doing the right thing. Now let's dive into the shallow money trench where thieves and pimps run free. A while back, we talked about Universal launching a joint venture to create and manage tech patents. The joint venture is straightforwardly called Music IP Holdings, or MIH, rather than some cute vowel challenge Silicon Valley.ly or .ify name. Earlier this week, MIH rolled out a series of patents related to the AI music supply chain. It's long been a cliche that the music industry should leave the tech to the tech people, but music and tech have been intertwined for longer than that cliche has existed. After all, RCA Records is still named after the company that popularized radio. There's a reason that vinyl has two different formats, and both Universal and Sony Music have their roots in the companies Sony and Philips that developed the most profitable format of all time, the CD. Which is a long way of saying that MIH, under the stewardship of UMG's digital head Michael Nash, is not really a novel concept. It's just been dormant for a while. The more interesting questions surrounding MIH are going to be, how will AI companies in the music space choose to deal with those patents? Will they choose to infringe and settle? And will MIH patents enable, hobble, or be beside the point in the competition between walled garden models like Udio and more open models like Suno? Are we looking at a new 45 versus LP or VHS versus beta format war in music? Well, it looks like Universal is wisely hedging its bets. And whatever the outcome, it's more revenue that UMG can keep for itself rather than sharing with those pesky artists and songwriters, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if it expands the market for everybody. Music Business Worldwide has more detail and managed to quote not just Michael Nash, but other old friends Chris Horton of UMG and Bill Campbell of Barefoot Media, who, as usual, is right in the middle of this tech music licensing whirlpool. Dylan Smith goes even deeper over at Digital Music News. As for me, I'm hanging out the Howie Singer bat signal. What does it all mean, Howie? Maybe we can get you back here to grind an axe. It's not bad timing for UMG to be making an announcement like this, especially given the company's stock performance coming off of its Q2 earnings report. UMG stock is off nearly 33% year to date, so UMG certainly needed a boost that goes beyond what even a stock buyback initiative can do to keep things afloat. Speaking of which, it's not only Universal that's buying its own dip. Spotify is doing the same thing for the same reasons. Spotify stock is off 25% in the last 12 months, with a stock price of $5.30 as we record, with analyst targets ranging from a $420 bear case to a $685 bull case. And in that situation, you almost have to buy your own dip these days. What a strange world. Spotify, like Universal, may or may not be staring into the abyss of a music finance apocalypse, but if you've got a predictable portfolio of revenue streams like the Beatles, and if you think your stock is undervalued, why not buy it back on the dip? I tend to think that the apocalypse pricing of these stocks is less an actual apocalypse pricing and more a right-sizing following some irrational exuberance, especially when it comes to Spotify, which is trying to scrape and claw its way out of being a strictly audio-centric business, which, of course, puts it into direct competition with its much better funded rivals, Apple, Amazon, and YouTube. In particular, it's hard for me to see how Spotify can really compete with YouTube on its own game. I think Spotify is going to have a hard time improving on its music streaming dominance. The long-term question is whether that remains sustainable in an increasingly video-centric media universe, and in the short term, whether its stock is priced for optimism or pessimism on that tip, which is all a long way of saying I'm leaving that valuation guidance to the pros. Bottom line, if you're in music, none of these companies is going away tomorrow. Carry on. And that's another Finance Friday. Our song of the week this week is Weather Me, coming from Bodega. I'm going back down to the corner, back to the Bodega. One of my favorite bands from Brooklyn who always put on a good show. Check them out when you get a chance. Weather Me is on our Unlimited Supply official podcast playlist on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Qobuz, and there's a link in the show notes. Support for Unlimited Supply comes from our listeners and our listener of the week, JD Tuminski. Thank you, JD, who has an Unlimited Supply trucker cap on its way to him right now for his support. The limited edition Unlimited Supply Black Trucker Cap is on sale in our store, bundled with a year-long premium membership. We also have Unlimited Supply Merit Badges, or you can just buy me a cup of coffee. Literally. If you like what you hear, please hit that follow button wherever you get your pods. You can follow us on Substack or drop us a rating and or a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify, or better yet, Substack, and tell a friend or three, preferably 21 times, because according to marketing whiz Susie Schultz, it now takes not 5, but 21 times for anything to sink in. So I will say this again. This is episode 600, and we would love your congratulations. Links are in the show notes, but you can also visit unlimitedsupplypod.com to sign up for our newsletter, to tell us what you think about the show, to suggest feature ideas, to feed us info, to feed us lunch, to call us out on our dubious assertions, and to tell us what we're missing out on. In the words of the great philosopher Eduardo Rivadavia, don't let your short-term greed get in the way of your long-term greed. And remember, in this business, no conflict means no interest.